Hello and welcome. You're watching us here on Scaling Right, brought to you by the Artha School of Entrepreneurship, and I am Mangalam Maloo. This is a podcast where we talk to founders about building sustainable companies and the many roads it takes to reach there. In the ever-evolving landscape of entrepreneurship, connecting with your audience and building a compelling personal brand is not just about visibility, it's about forging meaningful connections that fuel your journey. Growing your business also means growing your audience. That's often a tough journey for entrepreneurs, especially in the early stages. Is there a guide or a roadmap that can help you create a lasting impact? That's what we're going to discuss today. And to talk about this, we have none other than Paula McGlynn, who's the co-founder and CEO of BhaDiPa, a regional digital entertainment company. You've definitely watched some of their clips on multiple social media platforms. In case you haven't, you should. And she's also written the hit Marathi web series. She's co-directed it as well. And you've probably watched it and thoroughly enjoyed it too. It's called Shantit Kranti. Paula, it's indeed a pleasure speaking to you today here on the podcast.
Thank you, Mangalam. Appreciate it. Thanks to Artha also for having me here.
Well, as companies grow bigger, how easy is it to elevate sort of founder-led mentality? The reason why I say that is because companies growing and social media following growing are no too different from each other. How do you maintain that?
It's a tough thing because when you're a founder, you ultimately are looking at building a company which can survive without you. That would ideally be the goal, especially in today's world of investors where they want an exit, there's going to be some plan of that kind of a thing. So they want to know, will the company survive without you? And that's one thing that, we face a lot is especially when you're in the entertainment space, you have a face associated with the brand.
Yep.
And a big struggle and intention that we set when we were trying to start BhaDiPa was that we were never going to be a one-face company or a one-face channel. And that was part of how we strategized our content, how we built the brand, the logo, all of that stuff, and came up with the name Bharatiya Digital Party because we wanted it to be the voice of a community rather than an individual. That being said, especially Sarang, my co-founder Sarang Sathe, he has definitely become a flagship kind of a voice, not just for the company, but for, a lot of Marathi youth, because he's, led the way in terms of stand-up comedy and many other things. There's a lot of benefits that can come when you have a founder who has a great name, who is going to draw talent. You get a lot of interesting people who come and want to just work with that person, who want to be there and be part of the school, as you would say it.
So let me interject here because we ought to turn the clock back. Here's a person who comes from Vancouver to India, sees India, gets drawn in by the colors, the multicultural facet of this country, etc., settles in Maharashtra because of some work-related stuff, etc., finds Marathi to be her, Marathi cinema to be her calling, Marathi content to be her calling, and eventually starts a regional digital content creation company. Mm-hmm. How unintuitive is that? And this about a decade ago when regional wasn't really cool. How did all of this start? What was the playbook? And now that you're here, in hindsight, it looks perfect. But I'm sure it wasn't.
You're absolutely right. I think the main thing that I could say I've contributed to the idea of BhaDiPa was bringing in my outside perspective. Being from Canada, it's a population of 33 million people. We sort of have a decent film industry, not for Canadian films, but for all other kinds of films. We have great television, radio, I would say theater leaves something to be desired, but music, we kill in music, especially. Guys.
Of course,
there's too many great Canadian
Justin
artists.
Bieber, a bunch of them. Yeah.
So culturally, Canada's, given a lot. And with only 33 million people as its population, when I was here, I was surrounded by very talented Maharashtrians who were working in the film industry, television and whatnot, and constantly being dissatisfied with their work.
And definitely more than 33 million.
Yeah. So when the first idea of doing Marathi digital content was when we realized there's a huge disconnect between Marathi audiences and the content that was being served to them. Mainstream media was definitely going for the older demographic, the family demographic, the housewives, and not really giving anything to the new young urban Maharashtrians, which were, not just living in the cities, but connected on their cell phones to the rest of the world. And they were not watching the Marathi content that was out there.
Wow.
And I think that, the fact that, say, one film, Sairat, can do 100 crores of business,
Right.
but for 6 years you don't have another film crossing 20 crores, shows that there is an audience. They're just not willing to pay for anything
Right.
in that language just because it's their mother tongue. So for us, that aha moment came when we were in this conference called Fiki Frames, and there was a symposium kind of going on about New Digital India. TVF was there, other big creators were there. And at the other side of the room, there was a seminar happening on the future of Marathi cinema. And the brainwave happened, and I asked Sarang, are there any Marathi YouTube channels? And we looked up and we couldn't see anything. No Marathi creators, nothing happening, which was like a Marathi entertainment destination online. So I said, why not? And we looked that up, and I started doing market research and saw that, there's 100 million Maharashtrians, Marathi speakers, 100 million people living in Maharashtra, and there's 85 million native Marathi speakers, and that number goes up to 100 million once you bring in second language speakers. So as a Canadian, I thought, oh, wow, this is great. There's a
Canadian
huge
market.
niche. It's a good market. And, this is something where we can apply ourselves. I've grown up watching YouTube. These guys, my partners, they know content. They've got the connections. We can build something here. And the most non-intuitive part of all of this was that everyone around us was saying, why do you want to do it in Marathi? It's such a small market. Just do it in Hindi. And we had to just keep saying that it's not a small market. Marathi is not a small market. Just because Hindi's there, it's tempting. But do you want to be a small fish in a big sea and compete with all of the noise? Or do you want to do and contribute something really original to a smaller market? And that was where we took that business call and emotional call as well, that no, we want to do this in Marathi. And that's the place where we can give the most and make the most change and add the most value rather than playing in Hindi.
That is incredible, and that leaves me with a lot of stats. You said that for 100 million Marathis or Marathi-speaking people, there wasn't a single Marathi YouTube channel itself. You know how different that proportion is when you compare to the number of lakes there are per person in Canada. In Canada, there are 33 million people. There are 3 million lakes. So there is a lake for every 11 Canadians. We don't have Marathi YouTube channels for every 11 Marathi-speaking individuals right now. So obviously that connect was there. And the other connect that I find is that you say just because Hindi is there doesn't mean Marathi is a small market. Just because the US is close to you doesn't mean Canada is a small market as well. I take that point. And now that we speak about, the market having grown so much when it comes to regional content, another stat that was pretty surprising was when the Premier Cricket League was on, the second most heard commentary language was actually Bhojpuri and not English as one would imagine. Perhaps Hindi was number one, but the second one was English itself.
Yeah.
Now, there are multiple estimates which do say that, YouTube shorts get over 70 billion views in just a day. That's 60 seconds of content. How do you plan for that? And beyond this, what do you think are the roles that companies can play when it comes to content creation and literally creating a connect with their audience, which eventually will perhaps become their consumers too?
Yeah. So when it comes to making a 60-second vertical short on YouTube or, wherever you're going to be posting that content, it can be as easy or as difficult as you choose. It can be as simple as you putting a camera in front of the mirror and doing your makeup and talking to people. Or it can be, you can spend lakhs of rupees, paying actors and getting a studio location and getting proper sound done and music. And it's really up to you how easy or difficult you can make it. And the best way to kind of come up with a content strategy for a brand, I feel, is to really consider your audience first.
Got it.
I think a lot of brands make a mistake of just thinking, I need people to know about me. And they need to know who I am, what my brand is, and how they can buy it, and why is it important for them to know about all these things. They kind of think about it like advertising in a way. But when it comes to making content, one thing you're trying to do on the social media space is you want to build an audience. And you want that audience to see some value in hitting that, that subscribe button and saying that this person's giving me something interesting and I want to be there when they give me the next piece of content. That is something that cannot be so brand-centric that you're not giving anything back to the audience. It can't just be a sell. You have to also give. And that giving can be valuable information. If you have a bicycle company, you do bicycle repairs, or you sell bicycles themselves, don't just put up videos showcasing your new design. Instead, why don't you show videos of how to put the chain back on when it falls off? Small tutorials, which are directly, say it's, if you're based in Pune, then you can do it in Marathi because, you're going to have a high amount of Marathi-speaking cyclists who will watch this video and then learn about your brand. And they might subscribe because they know that, if I buy from this company in future, I know that it's not just a product, but I will be part of a community of other people who are interested in the same thing. And this business is going to be educating me on how to best use the product, how to best live my life, and you're giving a lot of value back to the audience.
So instead of just outrageous selling, all you do is add value to people. And if they see value in the content that you create, perhaps they will see value in the product that you may eventually want to sell as well.
Yeah, and I think that it's easier when your product is something that naturally gives to people. It adds value to their life. If you're selling, junk food or something else, you might have to think a little harder about where's the value add. but there can be,
Yes.
So it's a very interesting space to play in. But the number one thing I think is you're not selling your brand or building an audience for your brand. You are building a community. You have to think about the universe your brand lives in and play within that.
So, the universe now can also be defined by a lot of algorithms. And a lot of entrepreneurs today are actually trying to build their digital identities. What they want to do is have a bunch of questions regarding organic growth or maybe bolster their audience through performance marketing, etc. What have your learnings been in this? How do you suggest entrepreneurs look at it?
When it comes to digital, I think you could go either way, but it really depends on what's your go-to-market strategy and how does this play into it? If you are going for an aggressive, capture the whole market really quickly because you're going to get a lot of competition coming in very fast, with any kind of consumable product or something, this can happen. If you don't go fast and hard with performance marketing, then you might just come up with something great, have someone copy it, and then do performance marketing and capture your market before you do. So with that aside, that particular situation aside, I'm 100% for organic growth in the digital space because it ensures that you have a very genuine and strong connection with your audience. We've played with both, but primarily we've always gone in the organic space. But it does require some level of knowledge about how the algorithms work. How do you make content that's engaging for the audience so that they write a comment, they actually like the video or subscribe, not out of, a robotic reaction, but because they are genuinely interested in following you for what you do. That kind of subscriber or a fan is 50 times more valuable than a view that somebody who's seen some ad, they maybe will subscribe, but in a month when they figure out that that's maybe not the only kind of video you post or you do some other things and they didn't really sign up for that, they'll unsubscribe and you'll lose them again. So if you want to build a high value connection, organic is the best way to go. It will see you through hard times as well. And in the social media space, it's a two-way conversation. So if you have the organic audience who are really there out of a genuine interest, you can also ask them questions. And they will give you very real, honest answers. So you get that high quality feedback for your product, for your brand, for your content, whatever it is that you're giving to them.
What's interesting about what you said is that, the community that you build will associate with something. That could be your brand or the person that is leading that brand. It could be content. In social media or the way digital works, a lot of people are thinking of brands as people themselves. There are a lot of times when founders and companies themselves are inexorably related to each other. How do you differentiate that? Or should one even differentiate that? Because yes, intuitively there are a lot of benefits, but also if, God forbid, something wrong happens with the founder, then the brand suffers as a result of that as well. So how do you manage this tightrope, so to say?
I think maybe some of the best examples we can look at would be actors, where their business is their brand and their brand is their business.
Got it.
There are some actors who have somehow managed to weather the storms over the years, the scandals, whatever it is, and still come out on top. And still manage to have a career. And there's others whose lives have completely imploded and they're struggling to survive, whether it be through a Me Too call out or anything, and whether or not it's their fault, whether or not you as a founder have done something wrong or right or whatever's happened, shit can go down, excuse my language, and it's outside of your control. So regardless of what it is, I think, the way an actor would approach it is to think about their craft first,
right,
and not focus on the personal image so much, but the personal image needing to be about having respectability as an artist. If you can establish that as your primary brand, as a very good artist, rather than a famous person who acts, that is where you will find your longevity. And I feel like when it comes to founders and businesses, it's a similar relationship. You want to make sure that you have got a reputation which is strong professionally. I remember when I first came to India, I started meeting some famous people, and interacting with famous people was happening for me for the first time in my life.
Right.
And you go out for coffee or dinner and, people are just constantly interrupting, asking for photos, asking for autographs. At that stage, I was like 23 years old and I was like looking, I was like, I don't want this. I don't ever want to be famous. I'd be very happy to be well respected in my field, and I would love that. But just to be famous for the sake of it, it just doesn't sound like a lifestyle choice I would go for.
Yeah.
And as an entrepreneur, and as a founder, if you can become a brand because of your business doing well, then you will be fine. And your business will be fine if there's something happens to you. You should be focusing on building out your name as a business owner first. And then anything else that comes along with it, personal celebrity, brand endorsements, fashion lines, whatever it is, that will be incidental. That'll be just for your personal audience as an individual. It's not going to have anything to do with your business.
But isn't it very difficult to then maintain one's authenticity when you're suddenly feeding into this image of yourself, which may have come to you a lot earlier than what one was deciding? Because, social media works in various myriad ways where a little bit of success in your business can get you 10 times the success for your personal reputation, and then to feed that 10 times, you have to do 100 times the work to currently build the algorithm. And it's a vicious circle, for the lack of a better word.
Yeah, that's why I have my LinkedIn and my Instagram are totally different people.
How do you maintain authenticity? Let's keep it simple.
So my strategy is I pick my platforms for which I'm going to say what.
Got it.
Instagram, for me, it's purely personal, promotional. I am either promoting a recent video we've done, or I'm sharing something from my life, my holidays, my cats, lots of cat videos and memes. It's the place where my personality can kind of shine. And then I can also leverage that to promote some of the work we're doing. But when it comes to my professional brand and the way I communicate with people as a founder, I choose LinkedIn because that's a space where I know I have an audience who actually wants to hear that from me. Whereas on Instagram, I have become somewhat famous on Instagram, the little bit of fame I have, say in lockdown, for making stupid reels, like stupid comedy reels with Sarang, where we had nothing to do and we would do these like misheard Marathi words kind of joke videos. And, our following shot up. And we were getting pushed to do more and more of these reels because people were loving it. Our following was growing faster than it had ever grown before. And I literally had to put the brakes on it and say, like, listen, this is just for fun. I don't want to be seen by the world as
someone who just does this.
An Instagram reel maker who just does this. People don't know and they don't care to know who I am. If they're just going to see something funny and follow me, they're not going to care what my background is. And why should they?
Right.
So better I'll just, focus on what I want to do, not think about following, not think about that on my personal page. Instagram, I'm not worried about how many followers I have. I'll post whenever I want. Whatever I want, that's that side of me. And then LinkedIn is where I have a strategy. I'll have my regular posting schedule. I'll have my list of post topics, and I'll plan out my content on LinkedIn because I know it's not just about me and my brand, but it's a place where I can actively drum up business and find good connections and hire people.
But increasingly, audience is also getting muddled, right? I mean, LinkedIn off late looks a lot more like Instagram. Off late looks a lot more like Facebook. Twitter looks a lot more like Instagram and Facebook. Instagram, I don't know what it looks like anymore because of the multiple reels, TikToks, etc. All of that. It's just turning into this one black hole of content which one can't differentiate from the others. Would you say that?
100%. I think it's...
So then how does one define strategy?
You have to, at some point, forget about the algorithm and think about yourself. I think that that's a really important thing that maybe as a millennial, I've had the privilege of having a separation in my early stages of life.
Yes.
And younger people don't have that experience where they can do that. And growing up, having an image with you, alongside you throughout your childhood and teenage and adulthood. It's a very scary idea for me too. Oh my God. I found my old Facebook the other day and someone was trying to hack into it. And I was like, oh my God, like what have I posted on here? The algorithms are going to do their thing. They're going to change every 6 months. These businesses, whether it be Meta, whether it be Alphabet, whether it be X, these are ultimately people running these things, and they're all just fighting to be the biggest. They all just want to be the biggest, and that's kind of the way the startup, tech ecosystem has gone. Everybody wants the app for everything, and nobody's managed to do it yet except for China for very different reasons. So I think there's definitely a point where you need to stop following the trends and focus on what's your core.
Got it.
And that requires introspection, that requires planning offline, and thinking really hard about, I have all of these things, but I just don't have the bandwidth. What should I prioritize? And it's going to be very personal depending on what you want to do.
I guess it requires a lot of discipline as well to not follow the trend, because if you look at the stock market, there will always be someone who's making more money on a stock that you don't own in your portfolio. But everyone's journey is different. If you have your investment parameters defined very well and you continue to focus on that, then maybe compounding at some point will do its magic and you will end up better than most, so long as you are sticking to a plan.
See, there's a book I'm reading right now called More Numbers Every Day. And it's about how numbers change the way we think about things.
Got it.
And there are psychological studies and, real life impacts that happen when you put numbers on things. Humans become less caring, less sharing, more selfish, and in general, less satisfied with what they're doing is as soon as you put a number on it. Whether it be, you're practicing running and you start, getting points on your running app for every time you hit a run, the experience of the run starts to become about clocking in your kilometers rather than being outside, getting your heart rate up, and having that organic experience of getting exercise. And it's good for you either way.
Yes.
But even this is something I've personally experienced, is that as soon as I start logging it on an app, I start to feel like, I got disconnected from the internet. That means this run doesn't count.
Right.
when it does.
When they say, right, that when the measure becomes the target, it ceases to be a good measure.
Yeah, so I think that while numbers are really important and very useful tools, they're often wrong. They can change the way that we think, and we have to kind of try and see things a little more holistically, especially when it comes to our personal brands as founders. What you believe in is really important. Not everybody's going to go out there and be an Elon Musk.
Right.
And if you try and be an Elon Musk, you're ultimately going to fail because whatever he's saying has been said now.
Right.
And you have to say something different.
You got to be original. Well, take that point.
Yeah.
Of all the things that we've spoken so far, the underlying assumption was that people like to put themselves out on the internet. They want to create that network, etc. Network itself is a word that a lot of people use very loosely. It's the ecosystem eventually, that old saying that your network is your net worth. Mm-hmm. How do entrepreneurs who are introvert go about doing this? Because extroverts, they find it a lot easier. But the ones who are introvert, having an identity on digital, then having an image, maintaining that image, trying to take it offline, and then getting your business to work around that image. All these things, the thought of it is very, very scary and very daunting. Mm-hmm. How do those guys go about this?
So first, let me keep people with social anxiety aside, because that's a different beast altogether.
Yes.
Being an introvert means what? It means you prefer in-depth one-on-one interactions over shallow multiple interactions. That, for me, is something I identify with. I would much rather sit in the corner of the party talking to one person for 3 hours and say, I had a great time, rather than jumping around the party, talking to everybody and not actually coming out with any new connections or deep, meaningful outcomes. So as an introvert who does this, I found that picking topics, picking spheres that you want to influence and have a say in, have a conversation in, is a great starting point. So say, okay, I need to drum up my network. Let me think about what are the things that are important for me as a founder. If I am a woman and I feel like I would probably have something to say or contribute if, say, I went to a female founders support group, that is something that could help me network within a space where I feel comfortable, and I know everybody at this networking group shares a certain value system with me. But say if you have a particular interest in whiskey or books or whatever it is, you can always go out and find something which is of your particular interest. And say if your business is in a field like ours, we could go for a few different things. We could either go for Marathi cultural events or something like that and try and target people in those areas. Or we could go for industry stuff, film industry, television industry, award shows, panels, conferences.
Yeah.
Where I find I get the most value is as a founder, I can go and talk on a panel somewhere. I know that those 3-4 people on that panel are going to be people who I actually get to have an interaction with, apart from just throwing around business cards.
Yep.
I can sit with them before the panel and chat after the panel, have a coffee, and then we might have a very serious thing we can talk about going forward, where I'm also terrible with names and faces. So if somebody gives me a business card, there could very well be a very strong, synergy or business connect there in the future. But I'm telling you right now, I will forget what that business card is for, who it was, and probably won't follow up on it.
Incredible.
Where there are other people who will.
Yeah.
So I think knowing yourself and understanding how you interact with people, you can start planning these networking things accordingly. I personally I'm a big fan of sci-fi. And if, say, I was looking to make a sci-fi film, I would try and gather and make an event for people who like sci-fi books and plan something out like that. And so in these kinds of ways, I think you can look at it as a founder when you're networking, there's a push and a pull. Yep. The push would be, you going out to a networking event And the pull would be you yourself organizing things. And for introverts, I think both can work. But if you do more pull and you start pulling people towards you, people who you know would have a focused interest, you can start organizing your own support groups, events, depending on what scale you're operating, and start networking that way.
Well, that is incredible insight because, it's the internet where a lot of the niches come together and consolidate, and that itself becomes a big mass, as you yourself discovered with regional content, I would say. Before we go to, the last few questions, what are the plans for BhaDiPa itself? It started off as regional content. Do you plan to keep it regional right now? Are you looking to tap into other regions? How should one approach growth when one is looking at a niche? You look at more of the same, increasing the intensity of the niche that you target, or maybe explore other niches, other regional content now that you've, identified yourself as a specialist in regional content.
So I think it depends on your skills as a founder and what the strength of your team is. How easy is it to replicate your business model in different markets? If it was a technology product, then that would be a very easy decision. I would, take my product and just multiply it out and adapt it to different markets. But if it's a very specialized niche, for BhaDiPa, we initially did think the big picture is going to be, BhaDiPa Bhojpuri, BhaDiPa Bengali, BhaDiPa Gujarati, BhaDiPa whatever. And we've, over the years now, started to think that there's so many more things we want to do in Marathi. And we've got such a big share of the market now. If we jump into another market from scratch, yes, we could take some of our business model. It would work, but we don't have necessarily the connections over there. We would be heavily dependent on somebody else getting us the right team. And we would just be building up the same thing from scratch. And building an organic audience from scratch is not something that you can scale fast. But when you have a captured market and you have your audience already, we're starting to think about it like, rather than jump away and lose focus on this market, which has so much we can still offer, we'll intensify the offerings we're currently doing, so more YouTube channels in Marathi, each one having a different specified niche, whether we've got entertainment, we already have food and travel, we have infotainment.
Yes.
There will be more coming.
More to the current audience than look for new audience to sell the current things to.
Yes, particularly because our market has so much more it wants to buy.
Yes.
in short, the entertainment landscape in Maharashtra is fairly dull. There is not a lot of cool stuff going on. And it's not for want of talent, but it's because there's not enough people who have the power to do it who are actually interested in doing it.
What's interesting is that there is a connect between the films that were made pre-Dil Chahta Hai and the films that were made post-Dil Chahta Hai in Hindi, because Dil Chahta Hai was the first that really spoke to the youth in its own language.
Yeah.
And that's exactly, I think, what BhaDiPa did when it came to the Marathi youth. And all of that culminated into a full circle when you did Shanti Kranti, which was in effect an ode to, what Dil Chahta Hai did for the youth itself. And that brings me to the last question. In his book, Good to Great, Jim Collins actually speaks of level 5 leaders who are ambitious, but the ambition is actually to create impact and a great company. It's not about self. It's about what their legacy should be, the companies, and the impact that they create on the company and the ecosystem itself. In the startup world, unfortunately, it's about self a lot more than it's about company. Do you think of any level 5 leaders that are there in the startup world right now? And if there aren't any, how do you cultivate them?
So, like I said, I'm terrible with names and faces, but so coming up with names at the drop of a hat, I don't know if I can name leaders who are there. I know that there are many. I think that the world of startups and is hopefully now coming out of a fairly negative phase, a fairly unconstructive phase where the goal was up and out and people would sign up for a 3-year startup plan. Investors want to get a return on investment 10x within 3 years. And if you're not showing that, you're not going to get investment. And people really stopped thinking about business and what is a good business. And a startup ultimately, by definition, is a young business. It's a new business and it should have a legacy of its own. And that's how I thought business was run when I started BhaDiPa. Because I'd come from film school background, I had just done a Udemy course on how to build a business model. I'm not at all a business trained person, not even marketing. I've gone to film school with a minor in geography. So I had done this business model course and I said, wow, you know what? I think business is a really cool way for me to enable myself to do the things I want to do and have more control over how I do it. As somebody who wants to be in the film industry, who wants to write and direct, but also want to produce, I want to enable other people to get their voices out there. Somehow, having a business seemed like a great vehicle to make that happen.
Got it.
And the goal was always that when we build up this company, this should be it.
Right.
That would be the ideal situation, that we've built a company that just lets us do whatever we want. And we build a business model around that. Whether what you want to do actually fits within a business model or is monetizable is something else entirely. I think because we're in the film industry and entertainment lends itself well to business, it's worked out for us. That being said, even within the entertainment industry, there's a lot of businesses which are built up backwards, where you have the name and then they invest in another business, and that's very common too.
Right.
Whether it be a celebrity investing in a startup or a celebrity, coming up with their own companies built around their own brand, whether it be, say, a Bollywood person launching a fashion line or a makeup
Right.
line or whatever. These sort of like what are they called? Whitelisted products. You just throw a celebrity
White
name,
labeled.
white label products.
But,
So it can go both ways. Ultimately, I definitely think the business needs to be the core focus. Otherwise, I feel it doesn't match with my value system. I mean, I have a very strong value system. I feel like if you're going to ask people for money, you got to give them something back of value that nobody else is offering. If you're just copying something else, maybe you're making it available somewhere that thing is not available, that's all great. But I think that kind of that would be a level 5 leader in my mind, somebody who is functioning within the values the society has kind of brought us up to have. Can't just be a shark out there, picking off whatever makes a quick buck. Because I think there's a lot of people out there like that. There's a lot of people, and most people in this world now, because society has made us more and more materialistic over the years. Even like I'm a capitalist, but still there's got to be a limit to how you can take advantage of people. And so for me, if you're somebody who's a founder and you're thinking that this is a business which is going to help you in your personal brand and your personal career, that is very wrong, in my opinion. I look down on those people. Sorry to say, but I do.
Right. Let's not put the cart before the horse. That's the word that has come in from Paula. Thank you so much. This was great conversation. Thank you for stopping by and helping everyone who wants to scale it right and giving the wonderful examples that you did give us.
Thanks. I hope I've given people something useful, and I just hope that at the end of the day, any potential startup founders and people starting out your businesses, I think if you can build it on a foundation of strong values and something that matches really well with your personality and what you believe in, that is going to be the recipe for success. I mean, if you can build the business model around that, then you will be good to go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
On that note, what we'll say is that creating a meaningful connection with your audience and cultivating a distinctive personal brand is not just a task, it's an art. The resonance of your message lies in the authenticity of your connection with your audience. So keep building, keep connecting while we go work on our next episode that you can tune into next week. Until then, it is me, Mangalam Maloo, signing off.
IVM.